Hello, this is Nancy Juetten, and I'm the Get Known to Get Paid mentor and the creator of the Bye Bye Boring Bio 2020 workbook, and also the host of the Learn More to Earn More YouTube channel, where I get to interview experts and luminaries and thought leaders who have something specific and terrific to add to the Learn More, Earn More conversation. And today is going to be a very powerful session. I can't wait to tell you what we are going to talk about. What are we talking about? We're talking about the use of gestures and hand movements and our body, even when speaking virtually. And I can't think of anything more timely or relevant or important in these days, given what's going on in the world today, to learn how to make the most of those things. And our guest today is Miss Holley Mignosi. Holly, so good to have you with us.
Hi, Nancy. So great to be here. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much. I'm excited to share all these hot tips.
I'm excited too. And I want to let the folks know who are watching that you and I met at a live event where people were demonstrating their ability to speak live on stage and to connect human to human and to make magic happen. And we've been following each other's careers in the intervening years. And you have certainly taken a huge step forward in your influence and your impact and your income, and I applaud you and I celebrate all the success that you've had. I want to tell the viewers a little bit about you officially so they know what the fuss is about. So I'm going to read your short bio because I love a good short bio. Speaker, storyteller, and body language expert Holley Mignosi helps speakers and experts increase their influence and impact through the art of hypnotic body language and the neuroscience of storytelling. With a combined 30 years of experience as a celebrity modeling and acting coach, fitness trainer, and public speaking coach, Holley has helped over 250,000 people embody their message and command the stage using her 5 phases of powerful storytelling framework. She's graced the stage with celebrity speakers such as Jack Canfield, Kim Kiyosaki, and Janet Atwood. She's the CEO and founder of the Dynamic Dream Life Group and holds multiple certifications in mindset and physicality specialties such as neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and hypnotic presentation skills, and other long words that sound cool. So
the list goes on.
Yeah, and talk about having powerful proof in your bio. I'm a big fan when people can demonstrate the proof of their claims with numbers and specifics and names. It's just such a privilege to have someone with your particular expertise on the program, because people are sick and tired and fatigued by talking heads that don't do a whole lot more than move their lips. And
that's right.
That's what we're here to talk about. Before we talk about that, though, I would love for our viewers to appreciate you, the human being, and a little bit about your story so we can appreciate how you came to this important work that you do.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. Well, the bio sounds all great and fancy and very successful, I guess you could say, but I have really learned in my life that people will care more about your success when they have compassion for your struggle. And let me tell you, I've had some struggles. It hasn't always been rosy. And really the journey started for me when I was in my early 20s. I was modeling and acting in my hometown of Sacramento. And I was modeling and acting during the day. And then at night, I was a modeling and acting instructor. So I was aspiring and educating aspiring models and actors to really break into the business. And I was making good money, doing what I loved, and helping people. And so here I am, 22 years old, thinking, okay, I've arrived at success. This is it. Until one day, everything made a U-turn. And that's when my boss, John, pulled all of us runway coaches into the room. And he said he was taking the company global. And in order to do that, we all had to look like celebrity models and actors. And at that moment, I knew I was in trouble because I don't look like a celebrity model or actor. Celebrity models are 5'10", 5'11". I'm only 5'8". And they have a very specific physique, very specific measurements. And I don't have those measurements. Let's just say I'm a little more curvy and definitely more athletically built. So one by one, he asked for all of us to get up on the runway, and he took out a measuring tape.
Oh.
And he publicly measured each and every instructor, the females. He measured our bust, our waist, and our hips. And so he measured the first two instructors and he said, perfect. And I knew he would because they had the right measurements. And then the third person to go up was me. And he measured my bust and waist and those were okay. But when he got to my hips, they were not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 inches too big. And he looked at me, pointed to my hips, looked at everybody else and said, if any of you have this problem, fix it or you're fired.
Ouch.
These were my friends. These were my coworkers. And some of these people I had hired, I was in management. So as you can imagine, here I am like 20 something years old and I am devastated, publicly humiliated. And at that moment, I did something that a lot of us do when we're in pain. I decided this will never, ever, ever happen again. I tried everything I could to get those 4 inches off, but I was only a size 4'6". I was already small. I was by no means overweight. A doctor would not say, hey, Holly, you need to lose weight. I was already very fit and healthy. I was 22 years old. So I tried everything I could to lose weight, but nothing worked until a little friend gave me a bag of white powder and it was cocaine. And she said, try this. And I thought, you know what? I tried everything else. Why not? And I tried it. And within a couple weeks, Nancy, it worked. Imagine that. Pretty soon I was walking down the hallway in my new sleek physique. I was getting compliments from coworkers, accolades from my boss. I even got a promotion and a raise. So here I am getting all these positive rewards, but inside I was dying. I had headaches, heart palpitations. I couldn't go to sleep. I was stressed out and I knew I was a fraud because I knew if I quit, all the weight would come back. And that's what started my 10-year relationship on and off with drugs to manage my weight until it got really dangerous. I met someone when I was in my early 30s, got married, got pregnant, and I was able to quit while I was pregnant. That was no problem. But by the time she was around 2 or 3, there were problems in the marriage. And unfortunately, that old frenemy of cocaine came back into my life. And he and I walked into the house one morning after being out all night. Our daughter was with a nanny. We had a live-in nanny. And my daughter said, Mommy, Daddy, where were you? Play with me. So he went off to bed and I said, okay. So I sat down, I was exhausted, really wanted to go to sleep, but you know, you do what you do for your kids. And I half out of guilt and half out of love, I sat down, we played tea party together. Within a few minutes, I got thirsty. I went to the kitchen to get something to drink. When I came back, she wasn't in the living room. So I went to her bedroom, she wasn't there. Went to the bathroom, she wasn't there. And down the hallway, I saw my bedroom door open just about a few inches. And you know that feeling you get when you, in your gut intuition, you know something's wrong? Well, I opened up the door and there is my blonde hair, blue-eyed ball of sunshine sitting on the floor holding my drugs.
Ouch. Oh my goodness.
I was terrified. And I ran to her, I checked her mouth, she hadn't ingested anything. I looked at my husband at the time and he's asleep on the bed. So I grabbed the drugs, threw them away, and in that moment, I got what I call a divine download. I heard, what if you hadn't walked in on time? What if you had to call the police? What if they called CPS because you're both using? What if she was taken away from you? And the worst question of all, what if she ended up just like you, but she never knew you because she went into foster care? It was like I saw my whole life flash before me in a direction that it was not what I wanted for me or for her. So I decided in that moment 3 things. I need to quit drugs, quit my job, and quit my marriage all at one time. And it's crazy, right? I mean, the industry, modeling and acting industry, had taught me to fake it until you make it. But in that moment, I was learning to faith it until I could make it. I had no idea how I was going to do this, but I decided that's what I was going to do. And I knew that, you know, when you need a mindset shift, we need mentorship, right? It's like, okay, I don't know how to get out of this. I know I want to be a healthy mom. The cravings were off the charts and I didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew I was going through this privately and alone. So I thought I need some kind of support. I hired a personal trainer. I hired Tom, the trainer. And he was 6'2", Italian, dark hair, dark eyes. And let me tell you, Nancy, I was highly motivated to go to every single workout. I didn't miss one. But he was so pivotal in changing who I was as a person from the inside out. I was getting compliments for not being skinny, but for being strong. And not for not eating at all, but for eating right. And pretty soon he said, okay, I think you should be a fitness instructor. I said, I think you're right. So within 4 months of knowing each other, we went into business together. We opened up Beyond Fitness personal training in San Diego, and we were an instant success. But I had a new problem. The problem was that I was ashamed of my history. I didn't want my clients to know that this model of health and fitness was just using drugs 6 months ago. But a little bit of my story seeped out to a client. And you know that phrase that facts tell, but stories sell? Well, that's exactly what happened. She went and told my story to her church and her friends and everyone she knew. And she brought in a flood of new clients. And it was like, oh my gosh. And it was fascinating.
From the fitness training, or to benefit from learning how to tell a story on stage?
I wasn't into storytelling yet. That was the turning point for me, where I realized the power of storytelling. At that time, it was bringing in clients to our fitness business. And I started to feel a calling, like, okay, there's something to my story that people are really responding to. And I felt a calling to have a greater impact and not just work inside of a brick and mortar business. So I started studying speaking, which is when you and I started to meet, right? I started to think, okay, who are the people that really can learn from? I want to marry what I learned from the modeling and acting industry with what is happening currently in the speaking industry. And I thought I was going to start teaching health and fitness from stage. But the more I got into it, the more I just found a love for entrepreneurs, for speakers. And I would watch people up on stage and I would say, wow, their content is amazing, but no one is rushing to the back of the room to get what their offer is. If they would only do this or that with their story, or if they could only use their body in a more charismatic, engaging way. And then I would see somebody else who had great content, off the charts body language, and sure enough, back of the room was flooded with people to join their call to action, their program. And so I knew my calling was for story and body language. Began to study with the best, and years later, here I am.
Well, that's
my story.
That's quite a story. It just goes to show that what it looks like on your Facebook feed may not be telling the complete story, but I so appreciate your vulnerability in sharing the depths of what had to happen in order for you to emerge and find a way to support so many people. Because in my work as a Get Known to Get Paid mentor, I notice that sometimes people have the recipe down about how to deliver a talk, but somehow they forget to bring their presence with them to the stage, whether it's live or virtual. And they wonder, why aren't the results happening in the shopping cart or in the cash box at the back of the room? And a lot of it has to do with who we are being when we are showing up on any stage, whether it's live or virtual. And for people who are by the book kind of people, when you say who you're being is not working right now, sometimes people sort of, their eyes glaze over and say, what are you saying?
Yeah,
I don't understand it. It's not concrete enough. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? I mean, right now, most speaking is being done on podcasts, broadcasts, Zoominars, Facebook Live. And a lot of times we have talking heads. Talking heads that are bobbing and swaying. And there are ways to show up more powerfully with greater leadership, with more charisma. Can you talk a little bit about what specifically speakers, experts, and others of influence can do to make the most of this little square that we have to actually create that connection and create more desire to do more business?
Yeah, there's so many things that we can do that we have control of. I mean, there's so many things in the digital world we don't have control of, but this you do. So the tips I'm going to give you right now, you can use virtually as well as on the big stage, but it also works for business, mating, dating, and relating. Really anywhere there's a person, this
You are good at a sassy soundbite. Mating, dating, and relating. Oh my gosh.
I learned from the best. You say these things a few times and eventually something falls out of your mouth. And you're like, hey, that's good. I got to write that down.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have this box, as you mentioned, this little rectangle here. And it's interesting because if we were in person, there would also be a hand gesture virtual box. Only that box is an imaginary box that goes from our shoulders, if you put your hands out, right about to your elbow, and just above the hips. That's the safe zone to use your hand gestures. And then when we're on Zoom, it's like we're using our hands and we're doing things, but all you see are moving shoulders and we're not sure what we're doing. So we have to be a little bit more deliberate with our hand gestures. For example, right now, I said a little bit. So I intentionally showed my hands doing just a little bit, or you can do an okay sign there. So there's very intentional hand gestures that you can use that are okay to use above this line. And if you get really outside the box, it's more distracting for people. So sometimes it's nice to just use one hand with hand gestures. The other thing that I love to do when starting out, and I suggest others do it as well, is when you start out online, especially if you are doing a talk, an online talk, stand. So if something like this, which is a chat, go ahead and sit down. But if you were to really be engaging in your talk, if you want to make a shift between it feeling like a Zoom meeting versus an actual talk, position yourself in a standing position, because your whole body is a communication system. The whole entire, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And leaders will always do this. You may want to write this down if you're listening or watching. They will always take up more space vertically and horizontally. That means their feet are nice and wide. They don't cross their arms or legs. And even hand gestures, if we were in person, a leader might have a more exaggerated hand gestures. On Zoom, you can keep it inside the box, but go ahead and stand a little taller, sit a little taller, throw those shoulders back just a little bit more. So that's something that you can watch for in leaders. And you can do that both virtually and on stage.
So let me ask you this. Those are wonderful suggestions, and I could see and feel myself standing up taller in my chair, just trying to model the example that you were demonstrating. Are there certain hand gestures or body movements that some of us make involuntarily or without awareness that crush our credibility without even speaking a word?
Wonderful question. Absolutely. Let's talk about picking, pointing, and pocketing.
Ooh, let's do.
Picking, pointing, and pocketing.
Okay.
So picking, simply when I say pick, I'm talking about itching, nose, this, all of these things like this indicate we're uncomfortable. So picking is something you want to stay away from. Unless, if you're on stage and if somebody else, let's say you're in a panel, which oftentimes happens, and someone else has got, let's say you've got just an itch on the end of your nose and you're like, oh, I just got to scratch it. As soon as the spotlight goes to somebody else, that's your moment where maybe you could do a quick little thing like that. But overall, we want to stay away from these hand movements that indicate that we're self-soothing.
Okay.
So self-soothing could be the picking or the rubbing. Like this is like, I'm not comfortable.
Okay.
Or it could be as simple as this. I'm self-soothing myself. The hands could also be rubbing legs, and that's a self-soothing movement. Pointing is simply when you're pointing at someone. So it could be pointing to someone in a virtual stage or pointing to someone in the audience. If you're going to do that, I suggest to use an open hand. The hands are our trust indicators. Trust indicators. This goes way back, hundreds of thousands of years in our caveman days when we would be out foraging for berries and food, and another human would show up that we didn't know. The first thing that we're going to look for is a weapon. So when we can show that we have nothing, it's still part of our unconscious mind, our reptilian brain, that this is safe. when we see hands. So when you want to point to someone, instead of doing this, which can also look like scolding, I don't know if you've ever had a moment where someone was saying, but having an open palm can be so much more inviting, generous, and calm, and show that, yeah, there's nothing in my hands. The third one we talked about was pocketing. Now, this is something that most women don't do, but men typically do when they're uncomfortable. You want to stay away from putting your hands in your pockets, whether it's a shirt or pants. Now, if you, for some reason, have to or want to, make sure you keep your thumb out. Now, this is also an old modeling trick, comes back from the modeling days. If you open up a magazine, you may see a good, handsome looking feller with his hand in his pocket, but I guarantee his thumb is hanging out. Because we don't want the whole hand to disappear. Again, it's a trust factor. What is he reaching for? What's in there? You want to at least keep your thumb out.
Uh-huh. Okay. I love that. That's so good. Picking, pointing, and pocketing are behaviors to avoid because they crush credibility and compromise trust. Love that.
Absolutely, yes.
So what are some other suggestions you have for us that can allow us to have greater presence on stage, whether we're in a box or on a big...
Or not. Yeah. Well, I have the body language IQ test if you want, if now's a good time to rock and roll with that.
Let's improve our IQ around.
Okay.
I've got my pen in hand. I'm ready to play.
All right, here we go. And if you're listening or watching, as I ask these questions, I'm going to give you multiple choice. So you'll be thinking about your answer too. All right. So here's number one. Who is better at decoding body language? So decoding means that you're watching someone, you're observing, and you're able to tell what their body language means. Is it men or is it women?
I'm guessing it's women.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Correct. It is women. There was an interesting study done where they took two groups of people, a group of men and a group of women, connected their head to these electrodes and monitored their brains while they were asked to decode body language. And the interesting thing is they found that women's brains light up in 15 areas compared to a man's brain. Their brain lights up in only 8. So they actually biologically are not using all of their brain to interpret the information that's coming across. Women are much better at finding the little nuances of another woman's body language. So for example, I say, okay, ladies, if a hot woman walks into the restaurant, you know, and she's checking out your man and she's marketing herself, I guarantee you're going to notice it before he does. And when he says he didn't even notice, there's a good chance he didn't even notice. He's telling the truth.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. All right, number 2, here we go. In a group of people talking, so this would be in person, what body part points to the alpha in the group? So the alpha is the word that we use for the leader, the person who is organically and naturally more in the leadership position at that moment. Is it the eyes? Is it the heart? Or is it the feet?
I'm drawing a blank on that.
Is it eyes, heart, or feet?
Oh, feet. I'm a quick study.
Got it right. It is the feet. So what we have found is we found that we can consciously control our eyes and the direction that we're looking. But our feet, our fingers and our feet tend to be a little further away from the core of our body, and they tend to be more of a tell. So if you watch any poker, you know, poker players look for tells, these subtle little body language signals that indicate what the person's thinking. So your feet will indicate how invested you are in that conversation. So for example, we know this through language that we use, you know, like square off with me. Right? Or let me look you square in the eye, which you're actually saying is square in the feet. If you have both feet squarely looking at somebody, you are 100% invested. If you're having a conversation, let's say you go into a networking meeting and you're having a conversation, you glance down at someone's feet, one foot is pointed at you and the other foot is pointed outside the circle in a different direction. Here's how to interpret that. Part of them is in the conversation with you, and part of them is more interested in whatever's over there. So it could be just an instant, maybe someone called their name, but it could also be that they want out of the conversation and they just don't know how to say it. So I like to look down, make sure I have their attention, and if not, change the topic, ask a question, or simply address, oh, I noticed you're interested in something over there. You know, would you like to resume this conversation later? Just say what's obviously happening.
Oh, that's so interesting. You know, I've been in plenty of situations in networking events in previous days when we were allowed to do that, where you just get the feeling that the buffet might be more exciting than what it is that we're discussing in this very moment, or some pretty girl that's turned someone's head, you know.
Yeah.
Good to be aware
and so
of
by
that.
looking at the feet, you can actually have a better indication of that. Yeah.
Well, and I loved what your response to that was. Would you like to resume this a little bit later? I see that you've got something on your mind. That's such a graceful way to exit versus saying something less graceful.
Yes, great. Yeah. Hey, you pay attention to me. Yeah, and I think the other person will really appreciate your sensory acuity. You're really using all your senses to pay attention to them and giving them that out. Yeah, so it's nice.
You know, I've always believed that there's nothing more important than to make other people feel important. And even when you're not saying anything, if you give someone your full attention, they will feel and experience what that's like and feel it's a blessing to them. And even if you say nothing at all, they will remember you for the rarity of you actually giving them your full attention.
I absolutely agree. It's like that saying, people remember how you make them feel. Yeah.
Is there another question in your group?
Yes, we've got 3 more. Okay. Number 3, in a conversation, what does the leader or the alpha influence? So this is multiple choice. The topic of the conversation, the pace of the conversation and when it ends, when to laugh, or all the above.
I'm guessing all of the above.
Yes, ding, 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 you got it right. The alpha or the leader, whether it's male or female, in the conversation really has all of those things. So people will naturally match and mirror the leader because we are safer in numbers. So if they laugh, we'll laugh. If they end the conversation, especially if the leader steps out, if it's a circle of people talking and the leader steps out of the conversation, you'll notice this lull, like, oh, what do we do now? And then somebody else will step up. Yeah. So in something like this, where it's just 2 people and you're virtual, you may notice a ping pong sometimes with one person leading and then the other, or you may just notice that the other person is completely leading and you're okay with that. But it's good to realize those things. So here's number 4.
Well, can I say something about that?
Absolutely.
I think that with podcast guesting and guest interviewing being such powerful ways to bring people to our expertise in this day, in this time, the way that one interacts with a guest or host is so revealing in terms of whether or not we actually want to learn more from either party. I have been on many a podcast or listened to many a podcast where the guest was so excited to share his or her expertise that the host couldn't get a word in edgewise. And there's this feeling that you have on the listening side where you're thinking, I wonder if this is how they intended it to go. Would it have been better if there was more pauses to allow for a response or a question? Because I do think that's telling as well, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And allowing it just to be a conversation and to have that flow, that equal ebb and flow, like you would with a friend.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a skill. I think that's a skill that as experts, if we do have content or story, that we're sharing, to maybe even in the beginning, put in what I would call a pregnant pause, a pause that is full of silence to allow something else to come in if it feels organic.
Yes. Yes, I think that's really important to talk about, because when we do conversations like this, and what my intention is for this conversation is for thousands of people to become newly aware of your particular expertise and what kind of value that it can add, and for there to be new opportunities for you to share this message with so many more people, because I think it's so important right now. And so I really appreciate the generosity of your sharing, and I can't wait to hear the next
questions. Well, thank you, because we really are learning a new style of conversation through Zoom. And there's a study done too that's really interesting that indicates, I don't know if you've ever been tired after doing 1, 2, or 3 Zoom meetings, and it's like,
oh, that never
really
happens.
Yeah, that never happens to any of us.
Zoom fatigue isn't real.
It's not real. Yeah, exactly. Well, some people say that it's, the electromagnetic field and whatnot, but there's also a study that may point to fatigue because we're trying to interpret the other person's nonverbal communication. We can only see from here down, and there's a slight delay sometimes. And so it's not as instant in interpreting what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So we really are developing a new kind of seventh sense, I guess, like a digital seventh sense to interpret.
Oh, there you go again.
Yeah, I've never said that before. That happened just now, first time ever, right here.
Okay, that's what we call a tweet and repeater.
Well, thank you. Okay, there you go. But it really is, because the other thing that's happening for me, and I think it's happening for you too right now, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm bouncing between looking at the camera and looking at you, looking at the camera, looking at you. And so am I really observing all of your body language cues? No, I'm not. So there's this other new, and who knows what we're going to call this other seventh digital sense, where we have to interpret and use more of our peripheral vision. Like I'm looking at the camera right now and I'm noticing your head nod, but to really look at the little things that I look at you.
This brings to mind something else that's really important in the digital age, which is how can we connect with the camera? I mean, I've been on many a call where either the host or the guest is looking off to the side or looking down because they're looking at your eyes, but your eyes are here and my camera's there. So given how important it is to connect eye to eye, nose to nose, and knee to knee virtually, what suggestions do you have around remembering that there's a camera there and giving it our consideration?
So one of the things that I do is when I'm listening, I like to look at you. I'll try and divide it 50-50 so the audience knows, I'm looking at you now. But when I'm speaking, I'm going to look right at the camera. And then to really watch your subtle facial cues, I'm going to look at you. But to really, the 100% of the time when you're speaking, except for like I have some things written down that I want to make sure that I don't forget. So I have those here, but they're positioned so I don't have to look too far down. And so when I'm speaking 100% of the time, do look at the camera and then divide your attention. When listening, maybe, look at there. The other thing that I do is in the Zoom box, like your box, like there's the 2 boxes, your box is positioned much closer to the camera spot than mine. So if I look at me, I'm looking at me now, you can see my eyes are going to the side. That way, if I look at you and look down, it's not as much of a move. So I try to put you much closer to the camera and not my own box. So that's something you can do.
That's so helpful. Just the idea of when you're talking, I'm looking at you. And if that's the one takeaway about that, I think that's going to be a game changer for people who are new to being on camera and a little bit flummoxed about what to do and how to feel comfortable doing it. I had another sort of a sidebar question I wanted to ask, and this is sort of based on what you know about modeling and wardrobe. And I mean, listen, we have seen all kinds of things on Zoom meetings, haven't we, over the last several months?
Bloopers are the best.
Sometimes they're eating their lunch and sometimes they forget to put clothes on the lower portion of their bodies, or sometimes they don't really pay much attention to what they were wearing at all. Do you have any comments or suggestions, especially for those who want to create income, impact, and influence from their desks?
Absolutely. What a great question. And I think that there's not enough attention put on this. So thank you for this question. First thing is lighting Get as much organic lighting as possible if you can position yourself in front of a window. So right now I have 4 light sources. 4. I have a very large window that I'm in front of. I have a Diva ring light, and I have 2 lights on the sides, box lights, to make sure that if a cloud cover comes over or something, I'm okay, and then it gets rid of shadows. The second thing that you can do is pay attention to your background and your coloring. I'm intentionally wearing some of my brand colors, a color that pops, a color that's bright. This is a bright turquoise. I also wear purples and the royal colors, and I notice you do too, Nancy. Royal blue, purple, reds, greens. Think jewel tones. When I see people show up to a Zoom, and for example, here's a pet peeve. Are you ready for a pet peeve? Somebody who's in health and fitness shows up to a live or a Zoom interview, and it's dark, and they're wearing black or gray. And there's just no vibrancy. You're selling health and vibrancy and energy. And the lighting is just, they may be delightful in person, but we can't see that because of the dark lighting or the shadows, if there's shadows on one side. I mean, I don't know, I might date myself. The Blair Witch Project, do you remember that movie, The Blair Witch Project? It was the groundbreaking, scary movie. The whole thing was filmed with a flashlight pointing up, because that's how you make a scary vibe. And how you make it warm and friendly is with these jewel tones and bright colors. So if that's all you do, is get that nice natural lighting, as much light as you can, and wear some bright colors, then we can see your body language. Your body language may not matter if it's really dark and we can't see you.
Well, that's really excellent advice. You know, I think that it's sometimes, it's such a kind thing to do, to say to someone, I love what you're saying and how you're saying it, but you're in the dark. Could we get some lighting on you so that you could be even more illuminated in sharing your message? Sometimes people don't pay attention to what others are seeing, but if we could all do that, even just for a moment, I think we're going to be of service to our audience and of service to our host or our guest, and that the quality of the Zoom experience will be better for whoever happens to be voyeuring in. I have another question for you that has to do with a hand gesture. I've seen this done a lot where speakers will bring their hands together like this. Can you elaborate on what this is all about and why they do it? I've seen
How is it used in context?
Pardon?
How is it used in context? What's the context?
You know, sometimes I don't know. That's basically, I've been seeing people, like they'll do this thing with their hands and it's like this, and I'm just going, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean? Is because sometimes it looks kind of affected and pretentious. So is there a meaning for this, or is it something that I just didn't get the memo?
Yeah. So I would also ask, is it primarily men or women?
I've seen women do it a lot. And there's one particular fellow that I follow who he has very long fingers, and he does this. And I actually find it very distracting. And I thought, yes, is there some course or some expert he heard say that when you're talking, you're supposed to do this? Because I'm just not sure. I haven't been able to pull it off with any level of finesse. And so I thought, well, as long as I've got you here, I should ask you.
Well, there is something that someone could possibly be trying to mitigate, especially if they're female. So let me address it with the women first. Women who tend to have nails, long nails, they tend to do what I call the claw. For some reason, they love their nails, and they'll unconsciously put attention on their nails, and they will tend to speak like this, where they make their hands into a claw.
Oh.
And it's scary. I mean, nobody wants this. So if someone has perhaps told them, hey, you're doing the claw, maybe they're doing this to mitigate it.
Oh.
Why they would do it with both hands is maybe they're just trying to do something with their hands so that they're not doing the claw, which is an unconscious. And again, I mainly see it with women who have nails, very long, beautiful nails. With men, I haven't seen it as much with men. Now I'm going to certainly pay attention. But again, they could be trying to mitigate a bad habit like pointing, for example. Or I've seen men that are very strong and dominant do a chopping effect. They're really trying to drive home what they're saying. And someone told them to not do that.
Right.
So now they're trying to mitigate with some other hand gesture. So I love for my students and for people that I work with, have a full tool box of different hand gestures that you can make, which we'll talk about that too when we get to the free gift. But there are at least 20 that I could give you right off the top of my head of different things that mean different things. For example, I love watching Wayne Dyer. He has such a flow and such an essence. And one of the first things I noticed about him when he was speaking is he does this move like this. Let's see if I can get on camera. He does this, not all the time, not repeatedly, but it's like, I'm giving from the heart.
Oh, nice.
I'm giving from the heart. I'm giving from the heart. And so anytime we're making this gesture that goes from me to you, you know, you can almost think of like a Hawaiian type of, he's very subtle and smooth. And so there's this beautiful gesture of giving. Now you can do that also with both hands, you know, from me to you. You can also say, we're in it together. Bring your hands far apart and then bring them together to indicate that something is really precious to you or loving or adorable. Just place your hand on your heart. Like, that means so much to me. And you can do that in Zoom. You can do that on YouTube. That really means so much to me. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is my hand gesture for thank you, I honor you, I appreciate you. So if you have a full toolbox, you won't get stuck in just one.
Like that.
The crab.
That brings me to a really yummy follow-up question I want to ask you. When we started today, we talked about how sometimes people will be masters of their message, but their delivery will be off in some way. And when they might have expected to have a stampede at the shopping cart or the back of the room and they're disappointed, they're not sure why. And what I'm taking away from our conversation today is that sometimes it's how we're showing up and how we're connecting with our host and our audience and how people feel the connection and the rapport that will determine or influence dramatically what the outcome can be. Have you had an occasion of working with a client that had body language and hand gesture challenges where they were brought to awareness about preferred and more persuasive manners of being, where there was actually the brilliant outcome of a rush to the shopping cart? And could you elaborate on that? Even
yes,
from your own
there's
experience?
Three, yes. Go ahead.
Well, either from your own experience or for the experience of clients who've had the pleasure to work with you.
Yes, there are 3 hand gestures that really stand out when someone makes these, especially if you're making an offer. So one of them that you want to make sure that you absolutely do not do is the stop sign. And I saw a speaker doing this multiple times throughout her talk, and then at the end when she was making her offer. So she's literally communicating to the audience, stop, here's my offer, stop, here's my offer. You know, and this also, when you push the hand out, it means stay away from me. This is a stop gesture, stay away and stop. And so where that would be appropriate, maybe if someone is knocking at your door and trying to sell you something, you can say, oh no, thank you. But not when you are sharing your offer. So that stop sign, we want to make sure that when you go back and watch your videotapes, if it's Zoom or YouTube or you're on a big stage, watch for the stop sign throughout your talk and then in your offer. The second one is the pointing. I saw a YouTube speaker, his topic was body language. And through the whole entire talk, we talked about this earlier, he was shaking his finger at people saying, when you do this and you do that and you do this. So again, the pointing, we want to make sure we have an open hand, and it's an invitation. It's a join me and let's do this together. And I'm giving to you. And it means so much to me when you join me in this journey of ABC XYZ. And the last one, especially as it relates to your offer, whether it's virtual or live, toes to the nose. Toes to the nose of the stage. Please make sure that you're either just firmly planted or even leaning in a little bit, not a lot because this is weird. But what I will see some people do, and some clients in the very beginning when they're making their offers, they might have some hesitancy in their offer, not in the actual offer itself, but in that the early days when you're first making your offer, like, oh, is anyone going to buy? I hope I'm saying this okay. I'm trying to remember my lines. And they'll physically move backwards. So we don't want to create more space between you and your audience. You want it to be firm, strong. Again, leaders take up more space vertically and horizontally, toes to the nose of the stage, even if it's virtual. So you want to make sure if you're virtual that you're not doing a lot of forward and back, because that's strange visually, and not a lot of side to side. So just very grounded, toes to the nose of the stage and the offer.
I love that. You know, it reminds me of a story. I have a very good friend named Debbie, and we've been friends a very long time. And we tell each other things that maybe we wouldn't tell other people. And one day she asked me what I really wanted to have happen in my life and my work. And she really wanted to know. And I was summoning up the courage to tell her what I really wanted. And as I started talking, my head was nodding to the left and the right. And somewhere in the middle of the first paragraph, she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, I want to bring your attention to something that you may not be aware of. She said, you're talking about something that's really important to you, but your head is saying no. She said, even if it feels weird, please nod yes in an exaggerated fashion when you're talking about something that is really important to you, so that you can have everything about your energy align with your intentions. And I thought it was such a brilliant gift, because I don't have Debbie sitting on my shoulder day to day watching whether or not I'm nodding yes or nodding no, but I have that message that she shared with me, which is, if this is truly of service to my audience, if it truly will make a difference, it will put me in a situation where I can make a brilliant outcome bring about for whoever should choose to work with me. I want to be full body in to invite that outcome without hesitation. So if you are nodding no instead of yes, and that's an aha for you who are watching us today, I hope that that will be an inspiration, because let's just say yes to more of what we want.
Yes.
And bring it in.
Yes, yes, yes.
And be grateful for the great outcomes that come to us. You know, I will also say that in my career, having spoken on live stages and having spoken quite a lot on virtual stages, I have had the occasion where there was that rush to the back of the room. And I'll never forget, this is just one more little tip. It's a practical tip, but if you deliver your message in a brilliant way and you are totally yourself and you are having the time of your life and it's so aligned and good, don't forget to bring a cash box with you. Because I had this situation where I did a great job on stage and I just thought I'd done my job and that was it. And when I showed up, there was like a line of people waiting, and I didn't have pockets and I didn't have a purse.
Like, what am I going to do with all this?
I ended up putting the money in my bra.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I'm totally caught unaware. So believe and behave as if you just delivered the best talk of your life, toes to the nose, inviting it in, and also practically speaking, bring a way to bring the cash home with you safely.
Yes, yes. And in fact, you know, in my talk structure that I teach, the very last thing that I teach starts with a W, and because I have an acronym for it, it's called ISHO. And so the W means walk away with what you came for. Make sure, if it's leads, if it's clients, if it's partnerships, walk away with what, make sure that you don't get caught up, like you say, in the talk, and make sure you walk away with what you came for. Really? And if I could, I wanted to add one more hot tip that will piggyback nicely off of the nodding story that you gave. And that is this: if you get an opportunity to watch a hot talk you just gave or an interview, turn the volume all the way off and watch what your body language is saying. Could someone decipher your message without even knowing what the words are? And if they can, you nailed it.
You know, it's so funny you should bring that up because it's so true. And years ago, when I was a marketing director for a fast food chain, there was like 148 kids that auditioned for a place in this commercial. I didn't want to watch 148 auditions. I wanted to find my 5 it kids very quickly. And that's exactly what I did. I turned off the volume and I watched for that it factor where I knew that the person had a personality that transcended the fourth wall, that they were adorable and memorable. And I mean, there's an awful lot that we convey without speaking a word. That's a brilliant tip.
Yeah, thank you.
So speaking of more brilliant tips, you have uncovered for us and illuminated for us the power of gestures and body language to create impact, influence, and income. And I know that you have a special gift that can be particularly useful for people who want a deeper dive. What can you offer, and where can our people go get it?
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation, and I'm so excited to share this with you. It is 15 of my hottest hand gestures to add sizzle to your communication style, and it works virtually as well as in person. Remember, for mating, dating, relating, all across the board. So you can get that at myname.com, which is hollymignosi.com/hot15, and Holley is with an E-Y at the end, Holley. But I think you'll have that in the show notes too.
Yes, I'll definitely put it in the show notes, and I will encourage everyone who watches this to run and not walk. And don't you also lead a very special Facebook group that is growing quickly too?
Yes. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me in my Facebook group, which is called Shine On Stage, just like it sounds, Shine On Stage. Jump on in, connect with me, let me know what you're up to, maybe how can I support you either on your story or your new talk, or you want tips or tricks. There's tons of binge-worthy content in there. And also on the Hot 15 hand gestures, I added something new. So this is the 2.0 version of it, and I wanted to let everyone know because it's pretty fun. I added 5 things that you can do to become more attractive. So this is a little bonus for more of the mating and dating side. Well, but in general,
us who've been married 33 years, I think we should all
yeah. But it's really fun little things you can do to spot flirting and to make your flirt, like get your flirt on, to make it more obvious, especially if you're dealing with a man who maybe, only 8 parts of his brain are lighting up instead of 15, and you need to be a little more obvious. So this will definitely put a little spice and sizzle into your personal and professional life.
Oh, that's so much fun. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This has been illuminating for me, and I plan to devour those tips and put them into practice. And I would encourage everyone who watches or listens to this video to download those tips, join your group, and be present to how they are showing up, because how you deliver your message and who you are being matters as much as the message you share, and you made that eminently clear. Holley Mignosi, a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for helping us to learn more and earn more.
Thank you, Nancy. You so inspired me. I had a blast and loved your questions, and it was truly an honor to be here to share with your amazing audience. So thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, that's a wrap for today. Thank you, everyone.